Our guest today is the Chief Executive Officer of the Chicago Public Schools. He graduated from the University of Chicago Lab School. He then graduated magna cum laude from Harvard University. In his senior year, he was named co-captain of the basketball team and was subsequently named first team academic All-American. From 1987 to 1991, our guest today played professional basketball in Australia, where he also worked with children who were wards of the state. In 1992, our guest today returned to Chicago to direct the Aerial Educational Initiative, which seeks to create educational opportunities for inner-city children. In 1998, he joined the Chicago Public School System. This past July, Mayor Daley named him Chief Executive Officer of the Chicago Public School System, succeeding Paul Vallis, who is now a candidate for the Democratic nomination for governor. With his academic and athletic credentials, his devotion to public service, and his commitment to those less fortunate, we may be looking at another Bill Bradley. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the City Club of Chicago, the proud father of a new baby, and yesterday he celebrated his 37th birthday, Arne Duncan.
Thanks so much for that generous introduction. It's very, very nice. It's truly an honor to be here with all of you this morning. It's obviously a tremendous honor to have the chance to impact children's education across Chicago now. And it's a very interesting position to be in. For most of my life, quite frankly, my family and I have sort of seen the Chicago Public Schools as the enemy. And we were trying to do in the non-school hours, 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock, trying to help students and provide what wasn't happening during the school day, the academic support, the mentoring, the enrichment. So to have the chance to truly try and impact the system across Chicago, this is a fantastic opportunity for us. From day one, we've worked to try and build the strongest leadership team possible. And I think we have a fantastic group of people here today who come from a variety of different backgrounds. Before I get rolling, if we could ask all of the Chicago Public School team members to stand up, please. Give them a round of applause. And I think our team has a unique window of opportunity here to dramatically improve the life chances of our students. Since the mayor took control of the Chicago Public Schools in 1995 and made education his top priority, and under the guidance of Gary Chico and Paul Vallis, a tremendous foundation has been laid for Michael Scott and I and the rest of our team, upon which we can continue to build upon. We mentioned Tim Martin earlier, the capital investment, the capital program that we have undergone here in Chicago over the last 6 years has been extraordinary. It's been almost $3 billion of improvements in our schools, new annexes, new additions, new windows. Our schools historically were crumbling, roofs were falling, roofs were leaking, and to see that investment, I think, is just a unique thing in all of America. We have labor peace. We've had 2 back-to-back 4-year contracts, and historically we wondered when and if schools were going to open. That's no longer a challenge anymore. This year, in fact, we were able to unite with the union and have a major back-to-school campaign, major back-to-school rally to make sure all of our students were in school ready to learn that first day. The union was a major partner with us. We had 40,000 more students in class that first day compared to last year, another 20,000 second day. So it's just a different level of collaboration, different time in our history. And then finally, our schools are safer than they've ever been before. For those of you who participated in our Principal for a Day activities just 2 weeks ago, you saw on an anecdotal basis where we monitor and watch across the city constantly that we've been able to create a culture and a climate of respect, of positivity, of security within our schools. At the end of last school year, we surveyed all of our teachers, and 97% of them said they felt safe in our schools. And while our goal is clearly to get that number to 100%, if we compare that to where we may have been 10 or 15 years ago, we realize how far we have come. So with the unprecedented capital investment, this time of labor peace, and this feeling of safety, security within schools across Chicago, every single neighborhood, we truly feel we have a unique opportunity here to focus on the years going forward and where we should be focused, and that's on the teaching and learning of our students. From day one, we are committed to building the strongest management team possible that we have ever seen, and we're thrilled with the talent and the commitment of the people we have brought to the table, and with our team's ability to quickly gel and to start to work together in the collaborative manner that's so important to Michael and I, and cuts through any issues of historic fiefdoms or working in isolation, or even worse, working at cross purposes. We recruited stars from the corporate sector, from local universities, from the nonprofit and philanthropic communities, and combined that new talent with the best and brightest that was already within the system. Collectively, we now have a team that not only supports one another, but just as importantly will push one another to get better. And as coming from an athletic background, it's so important that we constantly challenge each other, constantly push each other to get better. And I think we really have a team in place now who is going to do that. We've also created 3 new small units that we think are really going to help take us to the next level. We have a strategic planning group, and there's often a tendency or pressure to respond to the latest headline or the latest crisis. We have a very smart and nimble group that's really going to be holding our feet to the fire, helping us plan out 2, 3, 5 years where we want to be academically, and then holding our feet to the fire to make sure we're getting there, so we feel very good about that unit. We've created a small research and program evaluation unit, and historically we've reacted again to research from outside institutions. We want to have the internal capacity to really evaluate everything we do, challenge what's going on, figure out what's working, what's not, replicate the strengths, discard what's not strong, and having, again, a unit internally who can really help to drive that process is so important. And then finally, we have an external resources and partnerships unit. And Chicago Public Schools is a large bureaucracy. We haven't always been the easiest group to partner with. I think there are many people who have tried to help and have sort of gotten lost in the maze of bureaucracy. So again, we have a small, very smart, very strong group that's going to help us really be a much better partner with the corporate sector, with the philanthropic community, with the governmental agencies, and just be a much better corporate citizen, much better partner here in town. So we think those 3 units, the strategic planning, research program and evaluation, and external resources and partnerships, are really going to help drive us to the next level. And our team is united by one educational goal, and that's to prepare all of our students, not just for graduation from high school, but for some form of higher education, be that a 4-year university, 2-year junior college, trade or vocational training. And we think that this goal simply reflects the changing economic times, that there was a day here in Chicago in which students could graduate from high school, go get a good paying job in the stockyards of steel mills, support their families. So we all know that that time is really a distant memory from a bygone era. And so our goal has to be not just to have students complete high school with us, but go on to some form of higher education, see their education with us as simply a starting point in their education career rather than an ending point. And to achieve that goal, there's a million directions we'd like to move in, many good ideas we have, but we're trying to be very focused, very strategic in our group, very focused in our approach, and really focus on the 3 or 4 critical initiatives that we think can dramatically impact our students' lives and provide the building blocks for future innovation and future growth as we mature as a management team and as a school system. First, there's nothing more important to us than our literacy initiative. We are convinced that if we can instill in our children early in life a love of learning and a love of reading, if we can provide them with the skills and ability necessary to think critically, to confidently express their ideas, both verbally and on paper, then so many more of our students will be successful both long-term academically and in whatever walk in life they choose to pursue. To this end, we have mandated 2 hours of reading and writing every day for every classroom, at every grade level, at every school in Chicago. And we think this time on task is so important, and there's a tremendous amount of academic research in this area. We really just take a much more common sense approach to it. If you want to be a great rock climber, you got to spend time climbing rocks. If you want to be a great violinist, you got to spend time practicing the violin. Or if you're going to do a great job reading and writing, you have to put the time into it. So that time on task is something we're emphasizing every single day. We've also recruited and trained over 115 reading specialists to go into our lowest achieving schools and to drive this literacy framework at the local school level, working with students, working with teachers, working with principals, and working with parents. It was one thing that had bothered us a little bit historically, that as the Board of Education, we had funded a variety of teaching positions, phys ed teachers, art teachers, music teachers, whatever it might be. We've never had a central commitment to funding reading specialists. We think for something that important that we need to step up and take the lead centrally. Some schools have been smart enough to do this on their own with their discretionary dollars, but we wanted to make our own commitment to that. So we've been working with a tremendous group of people we have recruited over the last several months. We have PhDs. We have people who are coming to us from publishing companies who have been textbook writers. We have retired educators. We've recruited talent from within the system. We feel extraordinarily good about this group of people. They've undergone intensive training, will continue to work together over time, and we think they can really drive this culture of literacy, this culture of reading at that local school level. Finally, we've invested about $6.5 million to create classroom libraries in every single kindergarten through third grade classroom in Chicago, and to provide professional development opportunities so that teachers can fully integrate these great books into their lesson plans. And we believe if we're serious about instilling in our children a love of learning and a love of reading early on in life, we must create literature-rich environments and surround them with wonderful folk tales and fables and stories. And I was fortunate enough to grow up in a household where I was surrounded with great books, and unfortunately, as we know, not all of our children are that lucky. And so our goal over time is to replicate that environment in every single classroom in Chicago, and to ensure that all of our teachers, be they math teachers, social studies, science teachers, whatever subject area they're focused on, that all of our teachers be teachers of reading. Secondly, we are absolutely committed to teacher excellence. And we must make sure that all of our students, but especially those in traditionally underserved communities of Chicago, are being taught on a daily basis by teachers of the highest caliber. These issues of teacher quality, recruitment, professional development, and retention fascinate me, both because there's such a direct link between teacher performance and student achievement, and because I believe that we have a tremendous opportunity to become much more creative and imaginative in our approach to these areas. And let me touch on each one briefly. First, on the teacher quality side, we currently have approximately 25,000 teachers in our Chicago public schools. And I can honestly say that as a group across Chicago, we've probably never had a higher level of teacher talent in the city. We have literally thousands of dedicated teachers in classrooms in South Side, West Side, pockets of excellence everywhere, who go far beyond the call of duty on a daily basis to help our students achieve. As a system, I think we have to do a much better job of recognizing these pockets of excellence, rewarding them, and perhaps most importantly, learning from and replicating their success. At the same time, we have a small percentage of teachers whose performance is unacceptable and at times even detrimental to our students' learning, and we must move swiftly and strongly to remove these teachers from the classrooms. Sun-Times, with John's leadership, recently did a fantastic series of articles that spotlighted the issues of teacher certification. And while approximately 93% of our teachers are fully certified, about 6 to 7% are not. Half of those we don't worry about at all. They're simply waiting for paperwork to come in from out of state or waiting for the results of their exams. The other half, about 3%, which is only about 3% of our total teacher workforce, have been allowed to linger in a temporary certification category for far too long. And my worst horror story on that is we have one teacher who's been in this temporary category for about 26 years. And that clearly defies any common sense notions of what temporary means. And with Michael and Jean's support, we actually went to the board last month and just closed that loophole simply. We created a 2-year window which teachers could get their certification. We think that 2 years is ample to, again, pass any exams they need to do, complete any coursework, get through the process. Once they're done, they can move on to be teachers. If they don't complete that time, frankly, we want them out of the classroom. So it's a very simple, common sense approach to solving that. The other thing we want to do to work with our local universities is to really end social promotion at that level. We've pushed to end social promotion for our elementary students. We have obviously criteria for our students to matriculate from our benchmark grades. We have high expectations for our high school students. And we really think to have students graduating from our local universities, coming out of schools and education, not able to pass these basic skills exams doesn't make sense. And so if these exams are part of an exit criteria from the universities, part of an entrance criteria, a criteria halfway through, whatever it might be, we think if the universities stepped up and took the lead in that area, then clearly the issue would go away on our front. Issues of recruitment, professional development, and retention are all woven together and must be approached with a holistic strategy. While there's much talk about a national teacher shortage and there are a lot of headlines around that, the reality is much more complex and actually I think much more interesting. We have in Chicago proven to have an ability to recruit teachers to the city. And in the last 3 years, we've actually doubled the number of teachers coming into Chicago. 3 years ago, we brought in 1,500 teachers. 2 years ago, we were at 1,900. Last year, we brought in about 2,300 teachers. And this year, we brought in over 3,000 teachers to come into the Chicago public schools. So it's not only our largest recruiting class, it was definitely our best in terms of diversity of talent, skills, caliber of universities these teachers were coming from. So we feel very, very good about our ability to recruit. We're going to continue to work in that area. We're also going to really push the envelope in terms of the alternative certification program. We've doubled just in the last year what I think are very interesting pilot projects, the Teach for America program, our GATE program, which is our partnership with the Golden Apple Foundation and Northwestern University. We're bringing in mid-career changes into our classrooms. It's very interesting. We have a GEO program, our Global Educators Outreach. We're recruiting literally internationally in our areas of critical need, math and sciences, world languages. We're recruiting from India, recruiting from China, recruiting from Spain, brought in a fantastic amount of talent to Chicago. We're going to work with Colonel Mills here on our Troops to Teachers program. We think there's a tremendous untapped market there, that there are many people, many men from Chicago who have gone into the military, maybe retiring after 20 years with great benefits, would love to come back and teach, help out in our classrooms. We're really going to explore that opportunity as well. So we feel very, very good about our ability to recruit great talent. The issue we see is one that's less of recruitment and much more one of retention. And Chicago, like many urban districts, loses far too many of their teachers early in their teaching career. We lose 30 or 40% of our teachers in those first 3, 4, 5 years that they're here. And anecdotally, I feel we lose far too many of our good teachers. And I think the real challenge for us going forward, and we're working with FRAC and working with McKinsey, the consulting firm here in town, who are really doing a thorough analysis of what our human capital needs are and how do we do a better job over time of not just recruiting, but again, retaining these great teachers here in Chicago. Teachers talk so much about why they leave. It's not primarily for financial reasons. That seems like a simplistic answer. It's not the case. Teachers don't come into the teaching profession to make $1 million. They know the financial reality of what it's like. They come in to make a difference in children's lives. They come in because they have a tremendous commitment. And somehow over time we lose that. Our teachers begin to feel disrespected. They feel not listened to. They feel overwhelmed. They don't feel a part of the decision-making process. And so we are committed to, over the next few years, really doing a much better job of nurturing our teachers, mentoring them, providing a collaborative, collegial learning environment in which they can thrive. I think if we can do that over time, we're going to be in a much, much better position. I think the teaching profession is very similar to, law profession, business profession, that a teacher at 21, 22 coming out of college is not going to be the same caliber teacher as that person will be 10 years later. Same is true in law school. Someone coming out of law school will not be the same lawyer that they are 10 years down the track. And so if we can keep those good teachers through those critical early years, keep them here in Chicago, that will clearly lessen our recruitment needs, but much more importantly, we think there'll be a much higher caliber teacher in front of our teachers when they're 8, 10 years into that profession, have had the chance to hone their craft, and most importantly, we think that'll make a difference in our students' lives. Our long-term goal is a simple one to articulate, a much more difficult one to achieve, but we're absolutely committed to that, and that's to make Chicago the mecca for teachers, both young and old, who are committed to public education and passionate about making a difference in children's lives. If we can create an environment where teachers want to come and want to stay, we're going to see something happen very, very special here over time. As we strive to improve the quality of instruction during the school day and to strengthen our core teachers here, we are equally committed to better utilizing the after-school hours in our schools, that critical time from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock, to help our students fulfill their tremendous academic and social potential. Growing up as a part of my mother's after-school program and later running my own, I've seen throughout my life how critically important it is for children to have a rich array of academic, cultural, and athletic opportunities available to them during those non-school hours. I also believe the demand for after-school enrichment programs cuts through any issues of race or class that we might have, whether it's two-parent working families, whether it's a single mom that might be coming off of welfare and starting to work for the first time, whether some of our children, frankly, that go home to no-parent families. We think every single child in Chicago deserves to have this rich array of opportunities. Academic enrichment, music, art, drama, sports, chess team, yearbook, debate, whatever it might be, we think these all represent critical vehicles for our children to develop their unique skills, to build their self-esteem, and to give them a reason to be excited about getting up and going to school each morning. And I always tell people I didn't go to high school every day because I loved algebra trig or I loved biology. I went because I wanted to play on the basketball team. And to do that, you had to do well academically. And as we strive to reduce our dropout rates, as we strive to get more kids going on to college, we think this could be a key strategy to really helping us achieve those goals. This year, we've committed about $30 million to create outstanding after-school programs in our elementary and high schools across Chicago. And rather than a traditional prescriptive one-size-fits-all approach, we recently issued our first ever RFP, or request for proposals, to all of our principals at the elementary school level, asking our principals, our teachers, our local school council members to come together and to design high-quality after-school programs that would best serve the unique needs and interests of their community, of their children and their families. Just to give you one quick example, Peck School, neighborhood school on the southwest side of Chicago, has put together a program that offers tutoring, that offers a dance and drama troupe that they're brought in from the community. It has a parent homework room where parents assist children in their homework and are themselves helped to taught to tutor, and it provides counseling services during the non-school hours both to children and to family. And that comprehensive, full-service, community-centered approach to these after-school programs we think is so important to creating learning environments that can serve our students and serve our families in our schools, which we see as very much safe havens in our neighborhoods. If we can do a much better job of this over time, school day, after school, again, we think we can make a dramatic difference in our children's lives. Finally, as we strive to create this range of very high-quality options for our children, we want to expand the range of choices in communities across Chicago. As many of you know, we've had here in town what has been often a two-tiered system. We've had a set of magnet schools that were very desirable, elite schools, where 90% of applicants were not getting in, where demand far exceeded supply. We've had a set of neighborhood schools that were much less desirable, of lesser quality. And I think the challenge for Michael and I and the rest of us is how do we make all of our neighborhood schools schools of choice. I don't go to sleep at night or go to bed at night worrying about the Whitney Youngs of the world and the Joneses of the world, Northside College Preps. How do we make all of our neighborhood schools, the Pecks of the world and others, truly schools of choice? And we really want to push the envelope in terms of how we do that, how we provide a wide range of opportunities, and again, be much more creative in our approach. We've had at the high school level this 4-year model that we've been locked into. Really want to look at 3-year models, 4-year models, and then 5-year models. Some of our students are ready to graduate, go on to college. After those 3 years, they're prepared. The traditional 4-year approach will work for some. We really want to look at the 5-year model. When I went to college on the East Coast, all the elite prep schools at the high school level had this 5th year, this post-grad year that helped students from the elite families of the East Coast get one more year of preparation to go on to high school, to go on to college, to boost the ACT, SAT scores, get into the next level school. Why can't we do that here in town? So we want to look at 3 years. We want to continue to look at 4 years. We want to look at the 5-year approach. We also want to look at the length of the school day. If you look at what the colleges in town have done, they're now open 8 in the morning to 8 at night for classes, open Saturdays. We need to do that with our students. We have students that for economic reasons have to go and work, have to support their family. There might be babysitting duties for their own children or for their mother's children. And so that 9 to 2:30 model might be a little bit outdated. If we could open our schools longer hours, perhaps students could come to us in the morning, go to class 8 to 12, work a part-time job 12 to 4, come back and take classes 6 to 8 at night. And so we really want to look at lengthening the school day, again, be much more flexible in our approach, taking away all the obstacles, all the excuses for our students not graduating, not going on to the next level. We want to look at again, the educational choices we have. We're very supportive of the charter school model. We opened our first contract school this year. We've never contracted out for educational service before. That's a very interesting thing to look at. We contract out for all sorts of other things, for transportation, for food services. We've never contracted out for educational services, so we're going to look at that model very closely. Both our charters and our contract schools have the ultimate accountability. If they don't do well, if children don't come to those schools, they're shut down. There are no customers. And so we're very interested in that. We're very interested in continuing to pursue those options, looking to Springfield to get the cap raised in the number of charters that we're allowed to bring here to Chicago. We're at 15. At this point, you can't do any more. We'd love to be able to push that. We're going to look at the contract model very closely and see how that goes. Finally, we were very, very fortunate early on to receive a very significant grant of almost $20 million from Bill and Melinda Gates' foundation, and that was matched with the contributions from about 6 local foundations here in town to create small schools in our larger urban high schools. And I'm a big, big proponent of the small school model. I helped to start a small school at Ariel before we joined the Board of Education. And I think our larger high schools, our students often get lost. There's a sense of being anonymous. There's a sense that no one cares about them. If we can shrink those large schools, create much smaller learning environments, fully autonomous 2, 3, 4 small schools within those buildings, each with a different curricular focus, each collaborating together, but also competing for students. We think, again, we can provide a much wider range of high-quality options for children, again, in neighborhoods across Chicago, not just in these elite magnet schools, but in our city's neighborhoods throughout the city. In conclusion, we focus on reading excellence, if we focus on teacher quality, after-school enrichment, and educational choice and innovation, we are convinced that over time we can create an environment in which many more of our students can achieve their dreams and fulfill their potential. We're also committed to working with a great sense of urgency and with the highest of expectations for ourselves, for our principals, our teachers, and our students. And what motivates me and our team and what makes us so hopeful about the future is that we know how much our students can truly accomplish if we give them real academic opportunities to succeed and support them over the long term. And let me close just with one anecdotal story about just one student I worked with prior to joining the Board of Education. This was a young girl we started working with about 10 years ago in 1991 when she was in the 6th grade and was actually testing 2.5 years below grade level, which is fairly typical both for her class and for the school. She faced severe challenges at home. In fact, 2 years into our program, both her parents abandoned her due to their drug addiction, and she was taken in by a neighbor. About 3 years after that, that neighbor died of cancer, and she was actually taken in by a volunteer mentor from our program. And so on the surface, on a very, very shallow surface, we have in her life, we have all the excuses, all the built-in excuses for low student achievement and for a mediocre school system. We have severe poverty, we have parental dysfunction, we have true urban tragedy, and we have no family history of educational success. We can give ourselves many reasons not to succeed and insist that the job is just too tough. But that's just simply the surface of what her life was. In her first year of us, what actually happened is that because she was pushed, because we had high expectations, because she was encouraged, within that first year, she not only caught up to grade level, but then started to push ahead beyond that. She graduated from high school, gained acceptance to an elite college, and is actually graduating this fall majoring in early education. And we recruited 3,000 teachers last year, and I can guarantee you we only need 2,999 this next year, because she's going to be the first teacher that we're going to hire coming forward. And what she represents, I believe, is just the thousands of unpolished gems throughout Chicago that are, again, in neighborhoods, inner city neighborhoods across the city. And wherever we go, there's just been a tremendous outpouring of support. I know I speak for Michael. We speak to groups like this, speak in corporate boardrooms, speak in community groups on the south and west sides, go to churches. Everyone wants our children to do well. Everyone wants the Chicago public school system to succeed. And if we can continue to have the highest expectations for ourselves, for our students, for our teachers, for our principals, if we can continue to unite as a city, as a community of adults behind our young people, we're going to see similar success stories become the norm rather than the exception. I think we're going to have a lot of fun working together in the years to come. Thanks so much, and I'd like to take any questions.
Thank you very much. We have questions. What are you doing about grade inflation in the school?
I don't know if we have much grade inflation. I think every year we've raised the bar in terms of our expectations for students. We're constantly challenging them to try and get better. The real goal is to raise our graduation criteria each year, to raise the criteria, our benchmark grades, 3rd, 6th, and 8th grade for promotion. Each year we're raising the bar, so the grade inflation is not something I'm concerned a great deal about.
That's interesting. Okay. Yes, sir. You have a question? Your name, please.
Anthony Cole from Haymarket Center. Superintendent Duncan, I'm concerned about some of your comments. You mentioned pockets of excellence in reading specialists as part of your programming. And I was thinking about something I read a while back about Dixon Grammar School over in Chatham community having an excellent program on reading. Now, I wondered if you were going to look at that program more closely and focus in on what they're doing well. How can that be replicated throughout the Chicago school system? Also, I happen to have a daughter that went to a parochial school here. It's called Old St. Pat's. And I was impressed with what they were doing in terms of even at the first grade level with journaling and things of that nature. And as I recall, they have Francis Xavier Ward, the upper grades over by Holy Name Cathedral. They scored very, very high on their standardized tests. I was wondering if you could also look outside of the school system. In other words, in my thinking, I assume you're interested in looking at the best models, find the best examples, and bring them to Chicago school system.
On that one specifically, we actually hired the principal of Francis Xavier Ward, who's now part of our management team.
Oh, wow. I'm impressed. What about Dixon?
Dixon, she's already hired, so we didn't have to hire her.
No,
it's a great school. And
yes.
Many things we talked about, the 2 hours of instruction every day, focus on early literacy. Dixon is one of many schools that's done a fantastic job of that for years. And many of the ideas we talked about came from again, great schools, great teachers who have led the way for a while. Our goal is to replicate that success across the board, have that be the norm rather than the exception.
Yes, sir. Press on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yes, your name, please.
Joyce Saxon.
She is former chairperson of the City Club of Chicago.
Thank you, Mr. President. Superintendent Duncan, is there anything realistically further you can do to curtail the sale of and use of drugs in our schools?
Looking at the social and emotional needs of our students is critically important. Our schools, we really feel, are safe havens in terms of that. We do sweeps on a consistent basis. We have a very, very intense security plan. And so the amount of drug activity in our schools, we feel is at a level that's far lower than it's ever been historically. So we feel very, very good about our schools being safe places. Where I'm much more interested is sort of on the counseling side. What are we doing to prevent? What are we doing to build student self-esteem so they're not doing that? What are we doing to work with family members in terms of counseling? As we talked about schools being community centers, we really think there's a lot we can do to bring in resources, to bring in nonprofits, social service agencies that work in those areas to come into our schools during the non-school hours, work with our students, work with their older brothers and sisters, work with their parents and family members to really get at some of those social ills that you're talking about.
Yes, next one.
Good morning, Diana Nelson from the Union League Club. My question, Arne, is about the role of local school councils in Chicago, which is different from anywhere else in the country. A great deal of research shows that one of the absolutely key ingredients in school excellence is the principal, right, who's the educational leader. Right. And this year, 270 principal contracts will be up, and it is really the prime responsibility of the local school councils to select principals. My question is, how can Clark Street help them make good choices?
Local school councils, as you know, are absolutely critical to our school success. As we talk about constantly, the challenge for Michael and I is to make all of our neighborhood schools viable. We cannot make our neighborhood schools viable without the buy-in, without the commitment of those local school councils. They have, we have an aging workforce, as you know, we have a series of principals that are retiring, we have contracts that are up. I think helping, we can provide training. I think historically our training has focused too much just sort of on the technicalities, on who's in control of what issues, or the governance issues, not so much in terms of looking for principal quality. having schools understand our priorities of focus on literacy, focus on teacher excellence, focus on after-school programs, looking at a holistic approach to education, helping those local school councils understand that, look for principals that embody those values, we think is critically important. The other thing we want to do is we want to expand the pool of potential principals that we're bringing into town. We talked a bit about alternative certification for teachers. This year we have a pilot program, we have an alternative certification program for principals, and there are people coming in from many walks of life historically who have just been shut out of the Chicago Public Schools, had no chances to work here. And we think they're great people who have been in other professions, great managers who could come in and really make a difference in children's lives. Principals, they're CEOs. They're managing multi-million-dollar budgets, they're managing a physical plant, they're managing staff. There's a set of people in this room who I think would be fantastic principals. Historically, there's been no chance for them to come in. Through these alternative certification vehicles, we can expand the pool of potential candidates, get the candidates in front of LSCs, train them to look at the things that we think are important, and we think the vast majority of LSCs are going to make good decisions.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. Speaking of candidates,
Your name, please.
Ken Duncan. I'm a candidate for state representative right here in the 5th
Oh,
district.
am I glad I asked that question.
All right. So we do share a very similar namesake, Arne.
Yeah.
Ken Duncan. So you have to do well so people can remember me at the polls. First of all, I'm a product of Jenner Elementary School, Lincoln Park High School, because I grew up in the Cabrini community. And I also have a great deal of respect for yourself and Mr. Michael Scott here, because I've sort of followed both of you all's careers in a very, very small sense, but I'm very proud of you all. I'm looking at being down in Springfield in January of 2003, and I'm trying to get from you, because I really have an appreciation for you all's new vision. What is it that you'd be looking for in your legislator, in an ideal legislator, if you were to take the leash off of us, me in particular, since I'm a product, to get accomplished down there, in addition to funding and various state standards? What is it that you would want your state legislator to focus on?
Someone who could help us with Pate Phillip. That's our challenge.
Okay. Well, I don't know if a state representative in the House.
Now, obviously, the key issues that we're looking for, one, is there's a tremendous need on the capital side. So we talked about, we've done $3 billion in capital improvements over the last 5 or 6 years. The reality of it is we have about another $2 billion to go to really complete the job. We think we're about 60% of the way there. Unless we get new revenue sources from the state, federally, wherever it might be, our capital program is going to be severely constricted going forward. So that's a tremendous need. Teachers pay, teacher certification. We think teachers are, again, they don't come into the profession to make $1 million, but they're paid too little. How do we start to create an environment in which teachers are paid more? And how do we recognize excellence? We have a national board certification process. The teachers go through an extremely rigorous process. How do we reward? How do we incent those teachers at the statewide level? How do we make Illinois the mecca for teachers that are willing to make that commitment? So those are big issues. Then obviously just the whole equity of funding issue. Chicago, relative to some of our wealthier suburbs, is getting half to a third of the money per pupil that students in Winnetka, students in other suburban areas are. We're committed to doing the best we have with the resources that we have. Every dollar we're looking at very, very closely how we're spending it. But over time, for us to truly compete, to give our students the real opportunity they deserve, we need to bring in more resources on a per pupil basis.
Fantastic. That's my campaign promise right there.
That was an unpaid political commercial. Mr. Lefkowitz.
Berkowitz.
Berkowitz.
There we go. Jeff Berkowitz, host and producer of Public Affairs, shown every Monday night at 8:30.
Another commercial. Okay, let's go. To the
Channel
questions,
21,
quick.
Monday night. Two-part question, real quick. Isn't the problem that you referred to the Sun-Times article on the problems that a number of teachers had in terms of the certification test? Isn't that problem much broader? Because many people characterize that certification test as basically an 8th grade academic competency test. So don't we really need many more teachers, more than the Sun-Times highlighted, who are academically qualified to teach than is currently the case? And two, the second question is, wouldn't the way to do that be to dramatically expand the alternative certification program to getting 40 to 50% of our teachers not from the schools of education, but from the schools of mathematics, from English, from history, getting people with true bachelor's degrees in those disciplines? And I think you'd find that those people would have a much easier time passing a much more stringent test of academic competency. Don't you agree?
With most of what you said.
That was for Tom Rosier. He said we have to phrase that as a question.
Those are two great questions. On your first one, the state actually already in September raised the bar in their exam. It was sort of this minimal 8th grade basic skills test that was frankly a joke. The state raised that to a much higher college level just 2 months ago. So that step has already been taken for us by the state. In terms of alternative certification, that's clearly a means, we talked about that earlier, to continue to recruit talent from a much wider pool. We doubled just in the past year the number of candidates coming into Chicago through our 4 or 5 different alternative certification programs. That's something we're continuing to watch, continuing to monitor. We're very excited about the pool of talent that's coming in. It's just a tremendous group of people. So we think that's a great recruiting source going forward who obviously can pass exams, but again, who bring a wide range of skills and can really make a difference in our students' lives.
I'm Carl Andros. I'm the director of a nonprofit working in your schools to improve kids' reading skills through the arts. And I congratulate you on the team you have put together, many of whom I see here and know from our work with them over the years. So congratulations on that first. I understand that there's a new, that Albertani is going to be working on the professional development side for the teachers you already have. And I'm interested in what charge you've given him and what we might expect to see in terms of change in that area.
Right. We spend tens of millions of dollars on professional development every year. In fact, we don't even know how much we spend. We're working with a group to really get a handle on that. We put a tremendous amount of resources in. The philanthropic community puts money into that. Local schools put money into that. There's a huge pool of money that's gone into professional development. I'm not at all convinced, quite frankly, that most of it had any true benefit for our teachers and any true benefit for our students. Historically, a lot of it's been like a conference downtown at a fancy hotel. And you're supposed to figure out something one day there, then go back to the south side and west side and do something differently in that reality. And so what we're looking for is much more longer-term, sustained professional development. We want to do it much more school-based, in classrooms. We're working with teachers, observing, paying attention to what's working, what's not, getting constant feedback. We have teachers that talk about that they've had no one ever visit them in their classrooms and observe their practice. So we're going to try and take a look at our resources, again, cut professional development activities that aren't working, that aren't benefiting our teachers, reallocate that money, take this much more long-term approach, based in schools, based on practice. We have, with the state's new ongoing certification requirements, a great avenue. Teachers have to go through this process now in order to maintain their certification. Our goal is to make that process meaningful and, again, put our teachers in a position to really get better over time. And the other thing we're looking at is we have so many good teachers in Chicago. For them to progress, they have to leave the teaching profession. For them to move up, they have to become administrators and leave the classrooms. One thing we're watching very closely, we're putting master teachers in a handful of our schools this year who are absolutely proficient in their content area, who are great at helping to mentor other teachers and having them work with their teachers in their core content area. This is like a new rung in the teacher's career ladder. They can provide great ongoing professional development. They've been in the classroom, they're still teaching, they know what these teachers are going through. It's an interesting model that we're going to look at that we think will, again, give potentially another rung in the ladder for our teachers, but really help us do professional development in a much more meaningful way based in schools, in classrooms on an ongoing basis.
Thank you.
Okay, short question and short answer if we can.
Yeah, hopefully. I'm Ellen McGee. I'm with Blackwell Consulting Services, and I'm also a past LSC chair and PTA president. And one of the concerns I still have as I look at some of the public schools is that the classroom size are still too large. Even in the best of schools, if you have between 27 and 32 children in a classroom, and even if they're the best of the best, I mean, a teacher can only do so much each day. And are you looking at decreasing the classroom sizes? I think that would, help with, the achievement
That's
of the
critically
children.
important. As we talked about small school size, and obviously a part of small school sizes within those smaller schools to have smaller class size. So that's something that we think is critical. As you said, the greatest teacher in the world has a very difficult job if they have 40 students. The reality of it is the vast majority of our school classrooms are not overcrowded. Where they are, we have to look to reduce those numbers and, again, put our teachers and put our students in a position where they have a chance to be successful.
And finally,
Good morning. Patricia Mendoza, Regional Counsel of the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund. Mr. Duncan, as I'm sure you're aware, the Latino population is the fastest growing population, and unfortunately we have the largest dropout rate. It hovers around 30%, 30-some% nationwide. And I was wondering if there were any programs either in place or in the works to address that population specifically.
Yeah, there's a tremendous need there, clearly. The dropout rate is way too high. The percent of Latino students going on to college is far too small. And if we're serious about, really doing something different, having these students become leaders long term, we have to, again, reduce dropout rates, increase graduation rates, and most importantly, increase the number of students going on to higher education. There are a couple things we're doing actually very specifically there. One, we're working in the Pilsen community with a cluster of schools, feeder elementary schools, and then the local high school, Juarez, to take a community approach to what are we doing with these students in a holistic manner. So often our high schools are divorced from the elementary feeder schools. There's no connection. There's no sense that we communally have to impact all of these students' lives. So we're bringing all those groups together. We're working with a local community-based group called LEA that's really going to help to provide mentoring, to provide support, to be doing college counseling, to be helping to provide a range of after-school programs on a pilot basis, working with those 9 or 10 feeder schools in the high schools to see can we over time dramatically increase the percent of students not just graduating from high school but going on to college. 2 nights ago, we were at the Hispanic Scholarship Fund. We're trying to raise a ton of money to provide scholarships to make college not just a dream but a reality for our students. So on the financial side of things, we really want to make this a dream that is obtainable for all of our students. And I think that the small schools approach that we talked about will benefit Hispanic students, benefit white students, benefit African American students. We think a lot of these schools, particularly in the Hispanic communities, are too large, 2,000, 2,500 students there. There's a sense of being lost. There's a sense of anonymity. If we can create smaller learning environments within those schools in which students truly feel cared about, where there's a personalized learning environment, we think that will give them a reason, again, to stay in school, know that they're cared about, and will keep them there longer term. So there's a whole series of things that we want to do that will benefit that population in specifically, but all of our students on a broader basis.